Okay.
An error occurred. Okay, let's go again. We are live, or so it says.
Yay.
Okay, here we go. Hello, this is Tiffany Lorraine, the Resilient Mother, and we finally had a chance to connect. We've been trying to get an interview, a little discussion going since the summit back in June, and so it's a beautiful way that this worked out because this month my theme is forgiveness, and that's your specialty. So I'm so glad that you came today to have that discussion with me. Please tell the audience more about you, Nicole, and what you do. We met through Forbes Riley, and we've just been friends ever since. So
Yeah, and I just so appreciate you having me on here because forgiveness is truly it is my passion, and it's my passion because I have a long backstory to do with divorce, but it is something that I know in my heart, if it worked for me, it works for everything, and so I have become an advocate. I'm a speaker. I'm an author. And I'm a teacher about the power of forgiveness. And I'm also an intuitive healer that truly feels that the only way you can be fully healed is by practicing forgiveness. Because anytime you're holding things within your body and in yourself, unless you release those, you really don't have the power to move forward in a healthy manner. So, for me to discuss this today with you, Tiffany, is amazing. So, thank you so much for having me.
yeah, my pleasure. And we'll have to catch up after here in a bit too. So
Absolutely.
what would you say are the basic principles of forgiveness?
It starts with you, and it starts with putting ego aside. You cannot truly forgive if you're coming from a place of ego, and it's learning to release the pains and the hurts that have been received by others. And the reason it's so important that you release it and not hold on to it is in my work, I found that many times people resist forgiveness because they truly don't understand it is specifically for them. It's not necessarily for the other person, because that other person might not remember doing anything to you, might not care, and you might be waiting the rest of your life for an apology that you think should come, and it's never going to come. So you're not hurting them by holding on to any kind of anger towards that person or animosity. You're only hurting yourself, and it's just not worth it. And I know that from doing it myself. It's truly not worth it to have those feelings, have your stomach be in knots. When you hear something about that person, you just boil over with anger. You have to release that. You have to let it go. And that's really the only way you can clear your path for a much, much, much brighter future for yourself.
Yeah, that is so true. People think forgiveness is about letting the other person off the hook and that they're not accountable or that somehow there's not going to be justice and that's too much mercy. And where's the balance in those two things? But if you do set ego aside and realize you're just holding a cancer within yourself that's going to grow because it doesn't affect the other person. And you cannot control what other people do. You can only control what you do. And our job is to be full of love. And we can't be if we're holding on to things. But it's not easy. Forgiveness is not easy. It should be, and it can be. But what would you say to someone, for example, who feels like they didn't get closure in a relationship? And so they know they're never going to get that apology. They know that they're never going to get closure in a traditional sense. How do you how do you help make closure part of that forgiveness process so you can give that gift to yourself?
Well, that's interesting because we think everything has to have this some kind of structured closure. And maybe it's something that happened in the past and you're never going to see that person again. Well, you can close that yourself just by using visualization with the other person. You can close it without someone saying, "Yes, that's okay," or the physical person being a part of that. You no longer need them. If they hurt you, they're really not going to be part of your closure per se. You are responsible for your closure and coming to terms with what happened. How did you react? How do you feel? And how would you rather feel if you did find closure and release and forgiveness. So it's really not between you and the other person any longer. It's your responsibility to find the closure however you can. And forgiveness is a beautiful way to find closure.
I love how you took that as we take responsibility for the consequences and the choices in our life. And it is also our choice and our responsibility how we react to a situation that did not go well, or to a person or something that just, had bad consequences, to put it, I guess, simply. And so visualization was one example that you just gave, but you also gave this idea that that power is within ourselves. Like, I think people forget we have the power within ourselves to create just about anything. We have this vivid imagination. And when we close our eyes, our mind really doesn't know the difference. And as we continue to do things, then it gets into the subconscious. So, do you find that people kind of have to start there, or where do they start to get it from subconscious into conscious?
Well, the first thing people have to realize is that 95% of what we do is from the subconscious. And these could be stories that we've made up, these could be things that we say or how we act, and we don't even really know why. And it could go back to childhood, and it could be something that someone said, and it could have been hurtful. Whatever the situation, we bury it. And the best way to find out some of your whys is to search your subconscious, because you always have the answers there. If people became aware of what powerful beings we truly are, we can change anything. We can change, literally, there's proof now that we can change our DNA. In 21 days, we can make a habit. There's so many things that we can change. We can heal ourselves. We're healers, not just me, not just you, all of us. And when you think about just the fact that when you cut a finger, your body automatically takes care of that. You maybe put a Band-Aid on it. In 3 days, your skin is healing. Well, it's the same for anything. So you can heal yourself. You can heal your emotions. You can heal your heart by just, and when I talk about visualization, if you want to forgive somebody, visualize a stage and pull yourself or the other person up on a stage. And because our minds are so vivid, like you say, you can envision a conversation between the two of you, but that person is not there, so they don't say anything. You get to have the conversation, explain that you were hurt, explain why, and then explain that you're forgiving for you, and send them off in peace and love. Because one thing we have to remember about forgiveness is to truly forgive someone. I talk about setting your ego aside, but it also is truly about wanting the best outcome for someone, because that places you in a place of love. And love is a very high vibration. It vibrates at about 500, where shame vibrates at 20. But what you're doing is you're wishing the best for them. So you're offering them that olive branch, if you will, of the best and highest use and good. And guess what? Whatever you put out comes back to you. So why would you want hate and anger to come back? Wouldn't you rather have love and freedom and this path you're walking on that is miraculous?
Yes, karma, right?
Karma. Yes, the K word.
We want good karma.
We do. And whatever you think, the universe, whatever you want to call it, it grabs your thoughts. Whatever you're thinking, whether it's subconscious or not, that's why you need to become aware of your thoughts and make sure they're always powerful and power words and exactly what you want. Because I'm telling you, whatever you create in your mind internally will become your real life externally.
It will manifest. So we
It
really
will
got to be careful with
manifest.
our thoughts. Yeah, we got
Absolutely.
to be, but you have to be aware enough of what your thoughts are. I think the pandemic definitely gave us the chance to slow down and realize what our thoughts were. But we're getting back out there. We're getting back. We're more aware. And definitely the things like meditation, mindfulness, people are more aware of, because you need those to slow down and even know what your thoughts are. And some of them may be a pattern, like you said, from the past. Trauma will trigger things, but that's still our responsibility to deal with those things. Have you ever had a client or someone who is really struggling because it was tied to trauma? And what tools did you give them to help take responsibility for their triggers and learn how to properly deal with that so they could fully forgive and move forward with their life?
And trauma comes in many categories, and oftentimes when you go back, because your body stores every memory that you have, even from past lives, even from parents, because you're passing down cellular memory. So the first thing you have to do is you have to find whatever you're doing. Why are you doing that? Is the trauma verbal? Is the trauma physical? Is the trauma who did that to you and why? You have to find the answers. And sometimes it can be just as simple as cord cutting, because we have attachments. They're energetic attachments. Our body is energy. It just is. And people will attach energetic cords to you without you even knowing it. Just sometimes they'll just think about you and that cord is attached. And so we have to find the why of it. Why is it there? You have to acknowledge it, and sometimes that's very, very painful to know. Maybe your parent verbally abused you or physically abused you. But you have to look at it from a standpoint of whatever they did to you. It's not about you. It's about what they're feeling inside. And that's really hard to grasp for a child. But as we get older and we keep carrying these traumas with us, one thing I learned, that it's never about me. Whatever is transpiring with someone else's words, thoughts, or actions, they have to go inside and look at why they choose to do this to someone else. And I've heard this 1,000 times. I know you have to. Hurt people hurt people. And I've found that to be very, very true. But there's many modalities of healing we can use. And a lot of times it's meditation with a mild hypnosis. So you can relax enough to go back and find that. You could speak the words of release. You can cut the cords. There's many ways to do it. And just by repeating, I use Ho'oponopono, and I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. And thank you. And you're saying that to yourself. You're trying to learn. It's really important. You're forgiving others, but you also have to forgive yourself, because a lot of times we grasp onto blame, especially little children. I must have done something wrong. I made mommy mad. I shouldn't have done that. So we're holding on to things that we've been conditioned to believe throughout our childhood or life. And that's where it gets kind of tough. But as we talk ourselves through it, and we can use verbalization to release those things, cord cutting, where you visualize. And I'll tell you, cord cutting is harder than you think, because I was trying to do it with my ex-husband and I couldn't. It would not cut. I finally had to visualize fire to burn it.
Oh, wow.
It's like I was burning the house down. But there are a lot of ways. I will tell you, some are very easy, some are harder, because when you attach emotions to some of these things, or when you've become unemotional and you have to look it in the eye, this pain or hurt or trauma, it does become very emotional. And that's a very good thing, because to show emotion means you're acknowledging it, and that's when the real work begins.
Yes, I found that to be true as someone who was raised to be quiet and not get upset and not have negative emotions. When I was finally able to start releasing some of those things, they were huge and scary to other people, but such a relief to me to be able to finally get these things out that have been held in for years, not knowing why, because of childhood trauma and different things. I've actually started doing EMDR work, which I've really enjoyed because it's very effective, and many other things. But what's been interesting is something you touched on, is that I've had to go back to these memories and see them from the other person's perspective, and
Mhm.
see that there was no malintent, that there was no fault. It was a situation that happened. It wasn't intentionally to hurt me. And and this is from a very young age, like probably 2 or 3 years old. I had like not even acknowledged really before.
Mhm.
And to have that perspective on it freed me from it, because it was like, oh, that just happened, instead of the world is not safe, and now I have to be hyper vigilant, and now I have to be in survival mode all the time. Like, I was just amazed how just having a different perspective put it into
Exactly.
place. And then it's not charged anymore. Now it's not a trigger anymore. And that has
Mhm.
been so amazingly freeing. because it took away one of these loops in my mind, or one of these things that my mind is holding on to, that's affecting my ability to have healthy and successful relationships in the future. Because if you can't forgive, if you can't trust people, you really can't have the thriving relationships with yourself or others that you want. And so,
Absolutely. And I always, if you're in this fight or flight right now, it's what we're saying could be very hard for some people, thinking, well, I'm not going to forgive them. But everything that I went through in a very ugly divorce, I look back at and think, what did I learn? What lesson was that for me? And that helps me. And what also helps me is the knowing that had I not gone through that, I would not be talking to you about it now.
yeah.
I wouldn't have practiced it. I wouldn't be able to help others walk through all on their journey to find forgiveness. And I'll give you an example of my mother. Her and my father divorced, and we had three. I have three kids, or my mother had three of us, and we were all adults. And she kept saying, my dad ruined the family. He broke up the family. I'm like, Mom, we're all adults. It just is what it is. And so for about 30 years, she kept saying, I forgive him. I forgive him. I forgive him. Just, first of all, if you keep saying it, you really haven't, because once you accept it, it's kind of just a mute subject. And so she got cancer in 2012, and it was very, very interesting. It was breast cancer. She was very sick for about 2.5 years before she passed away. But about 4 days before she passed away, she looked at me and said, she says, she says, he slept with all of my friends. And I said, I'm like, Mom, you said you forgave him. She goes, well, I have, but he did do that. Well, she hadn't, because when you forgive, you don't forget. You always keep that lesson with you, but it's like you no longer have to talk about it.
Yeah.
And so she carried those emotions, that pain, that suffering with her for 30 years, literally up until the time that she passed away. And so in looking back at that, I told myself, because I was going through divorce at the time, I thought, I will never let a man do that to me. I will never let what transpired in my relationship make me so physically sick that I passed away from it. So it can make you sick.
Yeah, because it's internalized, whether you realize it or not. And it will manifest in one way or the other, whether it's in sickness or relationships or patterns that affect maybe your work or your ability to perform. I mean, the minute you get triggered, at least in my experience, if you don't know how to deal with your triggers, it can derail you for days. For some people, it can derail you for a few hours. And that when you get good at it, it can derail you for a few minutes and you can just move on. But
Exactly.
and I think that's part of forgiving too, especially things that are much more intense to forgive, and trauma and abuse, because they are painful. They're excruciatingly painful. We're not minimizing that at all. And the human emotions are ebb and flow. Like, I feel things very, very deeply. And so when I feel pain, I feel it pretty intensely. And it makes some people uncomfortable, but those who have experienced it get it. And that's been kind of a thing too, is that if you want to help somebody that's going through something, having a hard time forgiving or whatnot, first you just got to sit with them and just accept our common humanity. Bad things happen. People make mistakes. It's just part of the journey. It's not something that you did wrong. It's not because you're not worthy. It's not because you're unlovable. It's not because you don't matter. It happened. Now what are you going to do with it? You're going to turn it into
Exactly.
a lesson? Are you going to serve other people with it? You get to choose to turn it into something empowering instead of defeating. And I'm hoping that rings true the most today for whoever is watching this, is just forgiveness is empowering, and it's the ability to make room for love. And love is so powerful. When we can look at all of the people in our life, past, future, present, and realize we're meant to cross each other's paths for a reason. And we're just meant to love. And we can wish the best for everyone in every situation, even those who have hurt us. we're in a much better place. And like you said, living on a much higher vibration that the world needs today. We need so much more light. We don't have room for all this judgment, for all these quick decisions, not getting the facts, not digging deeper. Because guess what? In the end, we all just want love and to be loved in return. We all have internal struggles. We all have maybe not the best relationship with ourselves and others at times. It's part of our common humanity. Nobody's perfect.
No, and we never will be. And it honestly boils down to treat others as you would like to be treated. It's if you look at things from just that angle, it becomes very simple. But we've gone the last couple years as a society, we have just turned on each other,
Mhm.
for opinions, which everybody is entitled to their own. But it has become ugly. And I truly think as things maybe calm down a little bit, people are going to start thinking about the anger that was cast upon others and how unjust in certain times, in certain places that was. And I do think when the reality hits a lot of people, you and I are going to be, kind of as we've conquered ours per se. Sure, we have triggers. That's where we need to, a trigger to me is, oh, I still have that. I need to forgive
Still
that.
got work to do. Yeah.
Still have
But
work to
it's
do.
my work to do. I'm not gonna blame, I'm not gonna shame. I'm gonna go, "That's my responsibility to take care of," and go take care of it.
Absolutely. And I think we're going to see a lot of others that are really going to need, I think forgiveness is very misunderstood. So we're going to have to be guiding and be leaders and be beacons of light to help people find their way through whatever trauma that has taken place in the last 2 years as a society.
Mm.
Because I look around, and the interesting thing to me is I look around, it hasn't affected me that much because I never let someone else affect me that way, but I've done my work. I
Yep.
know how not to let it affect me. And if you do your work, you will rise in consciousness. Your vibration will rise. And what I found is like the people that do not resonate with me anymore because I am different than I was, they go away. New people come in, but when someone does go away, I send them love, blessings, silently through the universe, through the one conscious mind, because that's what I want to get back. I want people to send me blessings and love.
I think you just said something so important that I experienced. During the pandemic, I really had to look at myself. Being abandoned pregnant sucked.
Oh,
It just sucked. I'll just put it that simply, okay? But I knew I wasn't going to let anyone take away, it may have been my last pregnancy, I don't know. And I wasn't gonna let anything steal that joy. I wasn't gonna let anything, I didn't want my child to feel rejected in any way. So I
sure.
went into self-compassion, and you forgive yourself through that process. In the end, you accept yourself exactly as you are, flaws and all. And it was difficult because I didn't quite know who I was because I was becoming somebody new. And so I think as you process some of this stuff too, it's okay to understand some people are going to go away. A huge amount of people went away in my life. And I'm standing there going, now what?
Yeah,
I got
what
the
happened?
toxic relationships out. Now what do I do? I'm alone. And so, I had like two people on my hand I could count on that I knew I could call and were going to help me and be there for me and show up for me. And it's been interesting because online, this beautiful thing about what has happened is you can connect to people all the way across the world. I got friends in Australia and the UK now and different places. And each one of them has given me some beautiful truth or nugget or light that I can take with me. Yeah, if you change your vibration, yeah, the people around you are going to change. The things that happen in your life are going to change. That's a good sign. And,
That's a
and it can be
good
a little
sign.
jarring. It can be a
Yeah.
little jarring at first, but know you're on the right track if that happens.
Well, exactly. Because if you think back to seventh and eighth grade, you were different. Then high school was different. Then college was different. And your friends, some have remained, but you've morphed, you've changed, as have they. And you don't. I remember a time when my high school girlfriends and I didn't hang around as much because they had babies young. I had mine when I was older. But then you can come back. So it just depends on the situation, but there's an ebb and flow with life, with what you're going through, with what they're going through. And the thing about the pandemic that amazes me the most is we've been like Clubhouse is just a voice. I can't tell you how many people I have connected with based on their voice. Because, it's interesting when you can't see them, you listen better. You listen and you can feel heart-centered people. You can feel people that are still full of themselves. And it was a learning curve for me. And I made friends and still am. I've met so many amazing people based on a voice or a Zoom,
Yeah.
you
And
know?
be comfortable in those rooms. Be comfortable in your new vibration. I think sometimes I've shied away a little bit because I'm like, how did I get in this room with these people? Like it's a little bit like, whoa, I didn't know I shined that bright. Okay. Woo.
Yeah,
So
we need sunglasses for you, girl. You are like the bright light. You've
oh,
got
you're so sweet.
good things coming your way. I'm so excited for you.
Oh, thank you. Well, and I think God puts us on the path. I mean, this is the path and the process. The level of empathy that I have for people now, I could not have without going through what I went through. My lack of judgment would not be there because I've lived through most of that. I've lived through a lot of things I never ever expected to. Some at the hands of other people. Some I made some dumb decisions. I will own up to that.
Oh boy.
But
And we all have, but I'm really glad you brought up non-judgment and compassion, because what I realized is after I started practicing my forgiveness with others and then myself, I never realized you could love yourself. This sounds silly, and I know this, but I love my family, I love my dog, I love my kids, but it never dawned on me that I could truly love myself. And once I thought, well, if I can love everybody else, I must be lovable. My parents love me, and so I started like working on myself, and I realized that all the decisions I made, that some were good, some were bad, but I made them with a pure heart, and I made them at the time with the knowledge I had. So there was never ill intent. So I started forgiving myself for some of the things that didn't turn out exactly how I thought they were and maybe could have been a disaster, but I didn't do it with meanness in my heart. And when I started realizing that, I embraced loving myself. And at that point, I embraced compassion for others. I saw them differently. Compassion for others and non-judgment.
absolutely.
We make up stories about people that 99.9% of the time are just not true. And
Yep.
maybe we make up those stories because we've acted in a certain way, so we're justifying it. And so when you start loving yourself, you love in a different way. And I talk about it being on a soul level, not just your body and brain, but your mind and soul. And it's so interesting because I tell people I still love my ex on a soul level, and I let them know. I said I do because he doesn't love himself, and we
Mm.
all deserve love. And I just feel like at this point he doesn't want to change or won't even try. So I send him love all the time just because I know he doesn't have that concept of it's okay to love yourself.
Ah, that's so beautiful, and what a great message. That's probably a great place for us to end there, is that you really need to just learn to love yourself, and I love what you said too, that you don't know what's in someone else's heart at the time. Think about all the times that you had good intentions, but it still didn't turn out very
Yeah.
well. But you
Yeah.
know that you were all in, you know you were in a place of love, and that's what you can do, and you can start doing that as a pattern with everything that you do moving forward. Oh, thank you so much for coming on today. This is such a
Thank
pleasure,
you. Well,
and
I love to talk about it. I always love working with you, and anything we can do to get this message out, I am always 100% behind it. So thank
awesome.
you for having me today,
Yeah.
Tiffany.
Where can people find you if they'd like to learn more about you and what you do?
I made it very simple for myself, so everybody else, and I'm always under Nicole Harvick, my name,
There you go.
Nicoleharvick. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Clubhouse. I'm pretty much on everything. Look for my name, you'll find me.
Yep, that's Nicole, my dear friend here. Thank you guys so much for joining us today, and those that will see this afterward. Be looking forward to doing this probably about once a month, and we'll catch you next time. So go out and learn to forgive and be full of love.